So why don't we go ahead and call this meeting to order for the Historic Preservation Committee meeting of February 28th, 2022. It is a beautiful day in Albemarle County, mid 50s. Let's see, we do have, as Chris stated, we do have a quorum. Let's see here. We do have a new member to introduce, and that is Felissa Mitchell. Is she attending today?
She looks like she's online as an attendee. Carolyn, can you move her over?
She should be over now.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Welcome, Felissa, to our February meeting. Welcome to our committee. I thought we would start the meeting by introducing yourself and letting us know a little bit about you and your interest in historic preservation. And then what we'll do is everybody else on the committee will go through and introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves as well. I'll start that off after you, Felissa. So welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Felissa Mitchell. I came back to the area in 2010 after doing 2 years of a Fulbright in Ukraine. So I'm just like skittish as a cat right now every time I turn on the news. I have very, very good friends still in the country and are fighting their butts off to save themselves. So I've been back about 10 years and retired for 2. I mean, it's impossible to grow up here. I'm indigenous to the area. It's impossible to grow up here without a keen appreciation for history and wanting to, and because it's important to me to be of service, to be of good use. This seemed a really, really good fit.
Great. Well, welcome, and we're glad to have you and your participation in this committee. I'll start off. I'm Ross Stevens. I'm a local real estate broker. I live in a historic log house in Western Albemarle and near the Sugar Hollow Dam, and I've been on this committee for many years, and have been involved in historic preservation. And what we'll do is I'll just let everyone jump in, whoever wants to jump in next until we're done.
Not all at once.
Felissa,
I'll go next.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. Hi, Felissa. I'm Nancy Takahashi. Welcome to the board. Our thoughts and prayers are with all your family and friends that you may know in Ukraine. It's just terrible situation. Let's see, just wanted to say I've been on the committee for probably 2 years now, maybe going into my 3rd. I think my interest in it came from my background as a landscape architect. I taught in the School of Architecture at UVA for many years, and have lived now in Charlottesville for a long time. I moved here in 1972 when I began as a student. So I feel like I have a sense of the county and love the mission of this committee. Welcome.
Next.
Thank you, Nancy.
I'll go next. My name is Liz Russell. I am the vice chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and I've been a part of this committee since I think graduating from UVA's master's in planning in 2013, and I interned for Margaret and helped in some capacity with priority recommendation number 2, which had to do with assessing National Register historic districts, properties and resources, and a lot of looking on the map, a lot of looking on Google Maps and some field verification. And that I don't know, sparked my interest in this committee, but I come from a background in historic preservation I now work for Monticello, or I have worked for Monticello for almost 9 years. I coordinate land use and sustainability and some project management role responsibilities. And I am also on the Charlottesville Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Liz.
Hello, my name is Daniel Giddick. I live down in Scottsville in the southern end of the county. And I'm a high school history teacher. So that's very much enjoy working with people in the committee and advancing interest in public history and preservation. Welcome.
Ross, to try and move things along, I think I'm just going to ask people to jump in.
Thank you. Okay.
Pete, can you introduce yourself next?
Hi, Felicity. It's so good to meet you. I am a relatively new resident. I moved here with my family in 2019. Historic preservation is a personal interest, and living in Virginia, where it has such a richer and older history than any place that I've lived, having lived predominantly west of the Mississippi, and more recently, before I came here in Australia, which, although it has the world's oldest continuous culture, much of the history post-European settlement is much, much newer. So just fascinated by the area, really wanted to learn more about it. But good to meet you. Welcome.
Thanks. Betsy, you're up. You're muted.
There, I think that's resolved. Felissa, welcome. I'm retired recently from 20 years at Monticello. Prior to that, I worked for the North Carolina Division of Cultural Resources, doing National Register nominations, doing tax credits evaluation, and doing historic district surveys. So I have a long-time interest in historic preservation. I'm thrilled to be part of this committee, and I'm glad to have you join us.
Thanks, Betsy. Ed, you're next.
I'm Ed Lay, professor of architecture, was professor of architecture at the university, now professor emeritus, and I have been writing about and teaching and had classes in and also consulting historic preservation of buildings since 1967 when I first arrived here. I'm originally from Pennsylvania and very much in that area. Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Craig?
Melissa, welcome. I'm Craig Jacobs. I'm a builder living in Madison County, Virginia. I've been on the committee for 3 years. Most of my work is historic preservation, museum restoration, that type of work. And we're welcome to you to the board.
Thanks, Craig. Diane?
I'm Diane Brown Towns. I grew up in Charlottesville City, and I live in Albemarle County at this time on my great-grandparents' formerly enslaved ancestors' property. I have worked ever since a child to provide a more inclusive narrative at historic landmarks and public spaces. I'm currently working on the Swords and Plowshares project. And I just got inducted, for lack of a better word, into Getting Word, because I'm discovering that I am a descendant of many who were enslaved at Monticello. And so the history continues to unfold. And I've been on the committee for this is my 3rd year. I've enjoyed it. It's been challenging, but I've enjoyed the challenges and my colleagues, and look forward to doing so many more things after my time has expired on the committee to serve the community, Rivanna District, and the community at large.
Thanks, Diane. B?
Hi, I'm Bila Pistol-Curley. I recruited Felissa. So I'm happy she's here with us. And
Hi, B.
hi, Felissa. Glad to have you on board, and I'm new myself. And look, excuse me for being late. I had an in-person meeting with the Charlottesville Albemarle Visitor Convention Visitors Bureau. I'm on that committee now also, and they meet in person. So I just made it here in the nick of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny Moore. I'm not a voting member, but I'm a liaison to the Planning Commission, and I serve on the Albemarle County Planning Commission, and I represent the Whitehall District, and I live here in Crozet in a historic home that we own.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Chris Taggart, planner with Albemarle County, liaison to the Historic Preservation Committee. I was bit by the historic preservation bug, probably very young in life, and always been interested in historic preservation history.
Thanks, Chris. I'm Margaret Malachowski. I've been with the Historic Preservation Committee and working with the Architectural Review Board here in the county for about 20 years or so. And so I am the second of 3 staff members who are regularly at these meetings. Carolyn, you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm the voice behind the scenes and glad to
Thanks, Carolyn. Okay.
Okay. So let's move to approval of the minutes. Were there any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes from January 2022 meeting? I have one change, and that was just to change the Jones homes to the Jones Historic Stable at Ingleside Farm. So the actual home has already been demoed, and one of the anyway. So I was referring to the Jones Stable up there next to the racetrack, which is on the north side of Garth Road near Ivy Creek.
Did anybody else have any changes needed? Not seeing any. Okay, then we would need then a motion with that change being made.
I move to approve the minutes with the revision by Ross.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, minutes are approved for January 2020. Thank you.
Actually, we need to take a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, all in favor to approve the minutes for January 2022, say aye.
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 All that are not in favor, say nay. Okay, minutes are approved for January 2022.
Just for the record, looks like that was unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote, absolutely.
Ross, quick clarification. That's Jones Homes to Jones Historic Stable at, and I missed the last part.
Yeah, I'm sorry, at Ingleside Farm.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
so it was a historic stable that that was the concern. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate you doing these minutes.
It looks like Felissa has her hand up. Felissa, do you have a question?
No, I was just raising my hand to yeah, sorry. I'll remove it.
Okay. All righty. Staff updates. First item is the demolitions.
Updates. And Ross, I put a quick PowerPoint presentation together just to get my thoughts organized. So if it's okay with you, I will just try and share my screen and do that.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You able to see my slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see the slide or do you see my notes?
I see no notes and a small slide at the top.
Just a second. Mhm.
There we go. That's
There
it.
we go. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So at our last meeting, someone mentioned Whitegate Farm and that there was a rezoning application in for that property. The request is to rezone the two parcels that you can see in that map there from RA and LI to Neighborhood Model District. The property does contain Whitegate Farm, which was a house constructed around 1875, according to the survey information at the DHR website. And then it was remodeled and enlarged later, maybe in the 1930s. And there's outbuildings as well. The DHR survey information says that the property was not evaluated in terms of eligibility for listing in the national registers. The property owner has offered to provide us with photos and drawings for documentation. He has indicated that the property is beyond repair. There are a few representative photos that he's already sent along to show the condition of the house, the main house. Chris and a member of the documentation subcommittee will be meeting with him at the site to see the property in person. And the scheduling of that, I believe, is in process. I wanted to mention also that I visited the Purvis store in Esmont a week or so ago. Went out there with the zoning administrator and met Peggy Denby and some of her group to look at the condition of the buildings. You can see from these photos, the building continues to deteriorate. They're very concerned about that, obviously. The group would prefer to rebuild to match the current footprint and the current number of stories, but it doesn't look like they've got a budget that will cover that. But they're still working on deciding how best to proceed. They will also be using that smaller building, which you see in the picture on the right, and that will be used as a trailhead. I think you've all received the monthly demolition report. It was emailed to you. You may have.
Margaret?
Yeah.
I have a question about the Purvis store.
Yes.
Have they applied for a demo permit? Or are you just giving us kind of an update on the?
I'm just giving you an update. The winter weather was not good to the house. They're anxious to move forward, but it's a little difficult without the funding they need. It's not going to be cheap to get the building down. They've already got an architect who's done plans, so there's plans of the existing condition, and I believe they've put together a list of all the pieces of the building that they want to salvage and be able to reuse in the new construction.
I was going to ask about salvage, but yeah, I've been on site too, and it's not in good condition.
Yeah, I spoke with Peggy last week, and they're trying to get a CACF grant and also get some more funds from Bama Works to move forward. They have a 3-person construction committee. I did not find out who is on that construction committee. Right now, they're focusing on the trailhead, and they've been negotiating with CSX to try to get the proper easements or purchase the old rail which ran, I guess, from Esmont to Albemarle to the soapstone quarries. They're having a very difficult time with CSX, which is not a surprise. They tried to work with the Building Goodness Foundation, and the Building Goodness Foundation elected not to take on this project. The residential part in the center picture on the right still has a good roof, but the store section on the left-hand side is completely gone and beyond repair. So what they're, trying to figure out, they hired an architect, Fred Oesch, I guess his last name is pronounced Oesch. And they have hired him and retained him as their preservation architect. Anyway, that's all the updates she had for me.
Thanks, Ross. Any other questions on the Purvis store?
Just a note, I mean, it just takes one hole in the roof for something to go. And once that roof is gone, this winter has done tremendous damage. Liz, you probably were the last person to see it. Was it at this state?
Yeah, that wall was buckling in, that exterior wall, when I saw it.
That hole has been in that roof for 15 years though. So unfortunately, that's nothing new. It's a shame that it wasn't caught before, but this, that level of buckling and whatnot is new, but I can remember driving by that years ago and the hole was there in the roof.
Now, the previous building, I would question its inability to be renovated, but that's neither here nor there. Supervisor Lepisto has her hand up.
Yes, who owns the building and how old is it?
Well, I believe Friends of Esmont have purchased the building. Is that correct, Liz?
They recently were able to purchase it.
To keep it or to tear it down?
Their hope was to renovate it. Peggy Denby is the president of Friends of Esmont, and she was actually born in the Purvis store. I believe her maiden name is Purvis.
Yes.
She's really leading the Friends of Esmont group.
Okay.
And really wanted to preserve this building for the community, and but was only recently able to purchase it.
Okay, thank you.
So again, it seems as if their focus right now is the trail system, which will get more people down there with the hopes that more people will get involved.
Okay. Anything else on the Purvis?
Since it is a country store though, and there's so few of them left, it would sure be nice to at least get to measure and photograph that. So is there any possibility of doing that?
Well, the architect that they've hired has done drawings, so those are complete.
Yeah, okay.
Is
he local? I've never heard of him. Is he local?
I don't know.
I believe so.
Yeah, he lives in Schuyler. He's one of the developers of the Quarry subdivision and has built a bunch of houses down there.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I don't know to what extent the interior has been photographed, but it's not entirely safe at this point.
It might be nice to get the drawings from him then for our own archives.
Yes, actually, she has emailed me what he's done.
Okay. Okay.
I can share those with you. Anything else? Okay. Moving on. Okay, so you all should have seen the monthly update to the demolition report. You may have noticed that it included the house at Belvedere. We did receive a demo permit for the house. I spoke with the property owner requesting that we be allowed to go out and document it. He did not grant us permission to do that. He said that the current condition is just too dangerous to have anybody out there in or around the house. He did promise to send us copies of drawings, which he has on file. And those drawings will also be part of a display that they are required to install in their community building. It's a requirement of the rezoning. If you're not familiar with it, it's the properties at the end of Belvedere Boulevard, and this is just a photo from the DHR archives.
Has anybody seen this house? I have never seen it nor knew it existed back there. Okay.
Surprise. We're waiting on documentation on, I think, 3 properties. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, from that members of the documentation subcommittee are working on. We're trying to institute a new process here for the documentation. This was just getting too complicated to get multiple committee members out to do the documentation. So we're going to try to have Chris go out with one subcommittee member to do whatever documentation we get access to, whatever documentation is necessary. And when we get the final drawings and photographs, we will link them to the agenda of the next committee meeting. And that way the public will have access to all that information. Any questions on that?
So you have those 3 documentations?
Yes, I just downloaded them today, actually.
Okay.
So I have them. They'll be in the next month's agenda.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. This was not on the agenda, but I just wanted to let you know that just today I received from the Department of Historic Resources a National Register nomination for the property. And I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. I think it's Lafourche. It's
Lafourche.
Lafourche. Okay. At 3555 Keswick Road. This building was constructed as a tavern originally. It was added on to over the years. Good example of a large country house in the county. And the boards will be considering it, the Department of Historic Resources boards, on March 17th. And
excuse me, how old is LaForge?
That front part is not all that old. The kitchen is the oldest part, and it's supposedly mid 1700s, although Ed, correct me. I mean, it doesn't seem quite that old, but 18th century maybe.
Okay.
But it's just a small part of that existing house that you can't see in that picture. That front part is probably later, second half of the 1800s, I would think.
I think it's dated 1744 on the outside.
Yeah. Okay.
The National Register nomination information says that the building comprises 2 joined sections. The circa 1780s rear L, that was a tavern, 18th century, and a circa 1860, circa 1920s, and circa 1935 main block.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any concerns with this?
No.
This is just point of information?
Typically, DHR will send us a copy of nominations that are pending, and encouraging property owners to get their properties listed in the state and national registers is one of the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Plan and the comp plan. So I will usually send a brief message back saying this meets our goals, we support it.
Thank you.
Anything else on this one? Okay. Finally, I just wanted to update the full committee. I know the marker subcommittee members have heard this already, but that committee has done a lot of good work on getting specific markers into the process and approved. and starting work on drafting a program for local historic markers. We've done a great job on that because we will now be working with the comp plan update and historic preservation plan updates. We think it's time to pause that work on the markers program so that we can be considering other programs that the committee might be working on and consider them all together when we get around to prioritizing. And so we'll pick back up on that at another time in the future. Any questions on that?
I do. I have a question regarding the historic markers. I mean, I know the one at St. John's School, that is readily available. You can pull it in the parking lot, you can read it, which is nice. But a lot of these historical markers, I mean, you pass by them. I've never been able to read them because there's no place to pull over and stop and read them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We were just talking about that amongst ourselves just last week. And often when you see the marker, then you've driven past it, and it's not easy to turn around and pull into even if there's a parking lot there to see it. It's a good point. I think as we continue with the process of any sorts of markers, either local significance or state or national significance, that considering the location very early in the process is going to be really important.
There has to be some place where someone can pull over and read it, because a number of these, there's no place to pull over even if you wanted to.
Right. Otherwise, what's the point? If you can't read it, it's not doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Liz, any comment there?
It's weird because I tried to raise my hand and it didn't show. Two things. I absolutely agree. In our draft documents that we were working on around a local marker program, we specifically were thinking about making sure, sorry, this is car driving by, that was a criteria of the application, listing the location and ensuring adequate pull off. And just to clarify, the marker at St. John is the state historic marker for the St. John Rosenwald School. The local marker, the county local marker, particular to Virginia Lee Murray, has not yet been installed, but it would be in that same vicinity, so someone could learn about both things, ideally.
Thanks. Any other comments on the marker program?
I remember at one time we talked about producing that app of some sort, but we never really, or a map of some sort, didn't we?
Map?
Yeah.
That's right. We talked about maybe linking the local markers with QR codes, so that someone could see them, take a tour of them. There's lots of things that it could build upon.
Would the QR code be on the marker?
Yeah, we were envisioning that, it could be retrofitted like to the post, like some sort of square, if you could imagine a little icon or something being affixed to the post of a marker.
Okay, currently there's one on Gordonsville Road, so you're going probably 50, 55 miles an hour along there. And
I don't know what one you're referring to.
I think it said the Murray School.
Okay, you're talking about a state marker. We're talking about the local markers.
Okay, so state markers.
So that's,
okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we have a lot in the county, and you're right, a lot of them are in not ideal locations. That was part of our rationale in wanting to have control of our own local marker program, to do more and engage more with the community.
Okay, so these would, going forward, we would just be doing the local historic markers and not engaging with the state. Is that what you're saying?
No, both programs. So if a topic is significant, of regional or statewide significance, then it does potentially elevate up to that state historic marker, like the Union Run Baptist Church.
Yeah.
That's not to say that couldn't be incorporated with. I don't know if they have, different requirements around. Could we put other things on there? state highway markers,
Ross.
but we could certainly look into that.
What we decided to do was pause that because that we didn't know what the cost would be, and it will be open-ended, so that's upgradable. And, you know, that's something that certainly can be considered later.
Okay.
Anything else about the markers? Okay. Those are all the staff updates, Ross.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is the discussion items, the comprehensive plan and the HP plan updates.
Right, so I hope everyone had some time to do your homework. They always gave you lots of links and reports to review. We thought that we would start today and taking each committee meeting over the next several months to sort of jump into the update conversation with a series of questions. I think you saw on the agenda, the question for today, just to generate some discussion is, you know, since the historic preservation plan was adopted, what goals, objectives, strategies, or whatever, what's been accomplished, and then just to generate a conversation around those items. Let's see. I gave you two documents to start thinking about them. One was the most recent annual report that went to the Board of Supervisors, and then one was just a draft document where I've tried to include some updates on the status of each of the items that were on our priority recommendations list. So that's as much presentation as I have for this item. And I think just want to open it up to discussion. Do you want me to leave this slide up or shall I take it down?
Well, we could go over the top 10 list, I guess. Would you like to do that?
I could bring that up. Would you like me to share that?
Yeah, let's go to the top 10 list. And it kind of gives us an update of what we've done and what we're completing and what continues to remain outstanding and ongoing and what items have not changed. Margaret, is that what you think is best to spend time on, or what do you recommend?
Well, I'm hoping that everyone has had a chance to look through that and has a little bit familiar with it. And I'm just, you know, it's very possible that I missed a few things. Those of us who've been on the committee for a while.
No, you covered, I mean, the top 10 is actually the 12, which I reviewed from previous years. And you covered all those in great detail. All the items, let's see here. Those 12 items, does anybody have any comments regarding that top 10 list, which is actually 12 items that we have targeted as the Historic Preservation Committee? Just
I'd
draft.
love to see us look into the possibility of historic overlay district ordinance.
Okay.
That's it.
Yes.
It was.
I had a question about item 4 because I wasn't familiar with that, and the report was really, the 2007 report was really helpful. That's about establishing the formal definition of the term significant historic resource. I wonder if part of our work moving forward in the comprehensive plan and in community engagement might be looking in a, through a different lens at that definition of significant. I see that the recommendation at the time was to go off of the National Trust standard language, but my understanding, and I haven't delved into this topic too much, I just sort of read it somewhere and it resonated, was that that definition, using that national register criteria definition, can exclude some vernacular or resources that may be of particular importance to Albemarle County and the community, and not, again, kind of as prestigious as would be typically viewed by the National Register, which probably needs to update their criteria, frankly, but that's another story.
That's a good point. So revisiting number 4 is a possibility.
Yeah, and something that would be maybe useful in posing to as a community engagement topic around, it's hand in hand with the SIGNOR, with local historic markers. I think is, it's all around this conversation of what history do we tell?
This is Nancy Takahashi. I'd like to take a look at item 1, which we have listed as completed. That is to create the Historic Preservation Committee. That's us. But I was reading the report, the comp plan, and saw that there is also a goal to reestablish a full-time historic preservation planner. And all of a sudden it struck me that it's really just this volunteer committee of us, that without really any teeth to do anything. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but is that something that we can advocate for, that this position really needs to be reestablished if it's that important really to the city's comprehensive plan?
Yeah,
counties comprehensive.
Yeah, I think the way that would work is as we update the comprehensive plan, which will be this, more of a broad document, then we'll update the historic preservation plan with more specific, targeted objectives and goals and objectives. And that would set up basically a preservation program. And so if that program has elements that are beyond the ability of the committee to handle, not that you're not talented people, but this is just too much to do, then that sets up a need for additional staff help. And once we get all those priorities and programs in place, then we would go to the Board of Supervisors to ask for budget funding for a position or whatever other program elements might be needed. The board would then let us know what the priority should be, and we would have direction, and that's how we would move forward. I don't know, B, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that because we're losing staff. We've lost several key members that have gone over to UVA, and we are in the process of trying to recruit staff. We are losing staff. The school board is in the same position. I'm not so sure. I don't want to burst your bubble or anything, Nancy, but I'm not sure if I see this really realistically happening at this time. I think there are just too many other things that are on the plate of the Board of Supervisors in the county. So to dedicate a person, a full-time person, or even a part-time person, I think we'll get more done just continuing as is. Because that also risks other committees wanting to get a full-time staff person, and that's going to be difficult. I will say that.
Like this list would be very different then if it's just, again, the work of a committee, of a volunteer committee of good-hearted, informed people, that the list has to be a very different list. And, not to, so I guess that's maybe a question that I have just to start out the discussion. It says the priority recommendations for historic preservation. And is that, again, just to be carried out by this committee? Yeah, I guess I'd like a definition about who this, whose priority recommendations these are.
Well, the priority recommendations, the way that worked was when the historic preservation plan was first adopted, it had so many recommendations that the board said, yes, we will adopt this. But historic preservation committee, you have to pick the top 10 things that you're going to work on first. So that's the priority recommendations. That's what that is.
Okay.
At that time, there was not a dedicated historic preservation planner, but there was, staff assistants like Chris and I offer now. I think this is a key point that we'll need to iron out with these plan updates. Is just what are the expectations? What are the expectations of the committee? What do you expect of the staff support that you currently have? Just what do we all think can really get done, and prioritize those things and go from there.
Thank you.
Let me, if I can, just throw this thought out. If there were to be historic overlay ordinances that were approved, then that would create need for more staff.
It would.
And that would also be
But it's
way more.
it's sort of a catch-22, right? Because all the work to get to a point where the county would adopt a historic preservation overlay. I mean, we can see just from the past many years of being a kind of an all-volunteer committee. It's just too heavy of a lift, I think, for a committee to really do. It has to come kind of from the inside.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this list like that, to that point, number 2 is, that's never going to happen, with the committee's current structure. I mean, that's a full-time job for somebody. I mean, that's like a GIS type job.
Well, actually, the committee did a lot of great work and made tons of progress on number 2. Liz,
What element is not completed? It's the color coding, right? That's most of the.
It's the assigning the World Heritage Site for the individual resources. It's assigning those labels.
So where's the database?
Where is the database? Ooh, that's like
It's part of the GIS.
Oh, okay. So it is part of, okay.
Yeah, we broke it all down. Everybody had a section.
Okay.
We
That's
all-
before. Well, kudos to you guys, because that's a lot of work.
It really was. They
was.
did an awesome job. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone knows it or not, but we have currently the county has, because we do like citizen or resident engagement, we have over 63 committees that we need to manage, attend, be a part of. So that's just a FYI.
Margaret, what is the status of interns? How are they brought into the picture?
Yeah.
Well, that is a good question also. I think, we don't,
Because we had one for that last project for the database.
yeah.
And she was extremely helpful of putting all that together.
Yeah, we don't have interns that we don't pay anymore. we pay all our interns now. So that's another like a budget item. So it's something that we'll want to consider as we're talking about the priorities and the programs that we want to do. I don't know that at the moment there is available intern funding for historic preservation, but we definitely want to, I would say we definitely want to get, as a continuing budget item for the future.
Betsy, was there another item you brought up, or was the historic overlay your point?
The historic overlay is actually down at the bottom of number 12.
Number
It says
12, okay.
evaluate the need for a historic overlay district ordinance. And I was thinking, we have a number of historic districts around the county, and such an overlay would offer them more protection, and that might be a place to start.
Okay.
What you bring up, Betsy, is something that if I can kind of like tie us back to the comprehensive plan as it currently exists. I think one of the weaknesses within the existing comprehensive plan chapter around historic cultural and scenic resources is that while the goal is to preserve Albemarle, it says the goal, Albemarle's historic, cultural, and scenic resources will be preserved. That's a goal. That's the high level goal. However, the strategies and objectives in that chapter don't really provide a mechanism to do that. So we're kind of talking about some really important things as we think about what does this committee, how does it want to shape, if it can, policy and then to kind of also understand, probably from Supervisor Lapista and others, like what does the county, how does it see historic resources? And I think we're going to hopefully get there because we're talking about these important things. So thank you for bringing that up, Betsy. Yeah.
I will say that working with the Visitors Bureau, I keep bringing up the beauty of Albemarle County and also the historic nature of Albemarle County. That seems to be very important to the Visitors Bureau. So that goes hand in hand with our wineries, with our, the good local food, with our hotels and everything. But to me, all of that encompasses Albemarle, and whether or not there would be any kind of assistance or working with them, because it would be in their interest to know about the historic sites in Albemarle to be able to advertise that. Maybe there's some dollars there. I mean, I could bring that up with them. I'm just trying to think outside the box of trying to get some,
I don't know about dollars, but certainly you can draw a connection between historic preservation being an economic development tool.
Yes. So have you all spoken with Roger Johnson or, the director also?
So this brings us back to number 11 on the list, which is to pursue the implementation of financial incentives. So all that economic stuff, that this committee has never really gotten into that. And I think that's one of the important sort of overlapping areas that we've sort of missed out on.
It seems like one of the things that this committee is capable of doing is just raising visibility about the idea of the historic resources. And so right now we have the website, right? That, and I think, I don't know how that fits into this list here, but I would like for us to think about a website and whether or not we could use it a little bit more to make it useful for people. You know, why would I go there? What would I get out of this? You know, I know we're saying we're going to provide assistance and advice, but I'd like us to be a lot more specific about what that advice and assistance might be. The other thing is that I'm noticing number 7, and I think it was 7 and 8, it talks about having an educational program or some kind of community events. And, you know, maybe those are kinds of things that just bring visibility to this issue rather, you know, than just being in the minds of somebody who bought a historic property.
Right.
How to make it important to everybody. And I think I'd like for us to discuss how that could happen.
Nancy, would you explain what you meant by, you said the West End? Did I understand that correctly?
I didn't, I don't think I said the West End. Again, I'm just trying to bring, you know, talk about ways to make the issues more visible, and the website is one I think important website.
Website, thank you, sorry.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think that the website definitely falls under number 7, all those educational programs, and certainly, I mean, that's such a broad thing. Yeah.
And Margaret, the website, some of these historic places could probably be incorporated into the Visitors Bureau's website. So when people look at, because they're going to look at different things when they come to visit Charlottesville, Albemarle. And if they want to look at historical places besides Monticello, Montpelier, Highland, you know, then then let's incorporate what we have also that is very local onto their website. That's easy to me.
Well, I mean, we'd have to be a little bit careful. We can't just advertise private property. That's not.
Oh, no, right. But I mean, you would be able to, well, then if you can't advertise, okay, I understand you can't advertise private property, but if we have, so if there's a house that is a historic house, no one sees it, no one has access to it. Frankly, what good is it? I mean, I hope I don't sound callous, but
I would guess the property owner thinks it's a lot of good.
Well, I'm happy for the property owner.
Well, it encourages preservation. It encourages preservation and the significance of the property.
Some other communities have thought it appropriate to do driving tours. So people, you could choose routes where people can drive along and see the historic properties. And I would say even in this county, just some of the historic landscapes. And, you know, you would not be encouraging the people to stop and pull in the driveway and go knock on the door.
Right.
You know.
But for those places where you could drive by and see it, like, you know, that would be great. Like the Forsh, you know, that would be, you could just drive by, that would be great.
Daniel, you have your hand raised?
Thank you. Yes. I mean, are we discussing ways to incentivize historic preservation for owners? Is that where we are in our conversation within the plan?
Sure.
For that, then I think there's definitely a number of options. Particularly, it can be ones for private property owners to be receiving awards for their actions in historic preservation. I'd like to suggest to everyone on the committee to look at the Carolopolis Award from the Preservation Society of Charleston. It's where I used to live. I lived in Charleston for about 18 years. And it was a quite prestigious award, and certainly was a way of encouraging property owners to research correct methods of historic preservation, whether it be types of contractors, other things. Again, I just encourage all fellow members there to just look up Carolopolis Award, CAROLOPOLIS Award for Charleston. It's a lovely website. And I'm not saying we mimic anything like that, but just to maybe just get the ideas rolling there, if that can be more constructive, and maybe some other social things can be included within that. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. Bring a lot of visibility. Show examples of people who decided to, to keep the property, to keep the structure as it, and celebrate that, and make a big deal out of it.
Sure.
On the website, we could put that in the news.
What I'm hearing are a lot of staff hours. I just want to point that out, right? Like the things that we're talking about doing, the committee can't do all of it. The connecting to the website, the events and programs, right? These are all great ideas, but they need a champion within staff.
Good point.
I have a question. It seems like a lot of what we discuss, I mean, there's been two examples at the beginning of this meeting. Obviously, we all know there's a lot of development going on in this county, and a lot of that is happening on older historic properties like Whitegate, or what was the other one? Well, Belvedere, Dunlora Farm. Obviously, we don't have a demolition ordinance. We don't really have a lot of control over this, and maybe we're already doing this, and I'm just missed the boat, but should this committee be, every time that the Board of Supervisors considers a rezoning of one of those properties, should we be advocating, send a letter or whatever that says that, that these we hope that they will consider making preservation of the existing historic structure a condition of the rezoning?
I think you're getting into the work of the, I think you're getting into the comp plan discussion, right? And if that's something that should be strengthened within the language of the comprehensive plan.
Right. And if I can insert that, Carter, it just depends on where that development is. If it's in the development area and someone wants to come in and put in X number of units that for affordable housing, a lot of it is affordable housing. That's going to be very, very difficult for us, frankly, to turn down, because we have a finite space. That's a development area. If it's in the rural area, that could be a different story. So we could advocate for that. But
I'm not suggesting that you not approve the rezoning, but it seems like the Board of Supervisors has some leverage in that scenario to be able to, I mean, that's the one governmental body that has any ability to potentially sway or dictate what happens in that development. And so in the same way that you say, well, you need sidewalks over here, you say, well, yeah, we'll upzone you, but preserve this historic house.
So preserve the house and surround it with apartments.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't do. I'm trust me. I'm not advocating that you deny the development. I'm just saying it's a way to accomplish the goal of the committee of preserving some of these structures within the proffer process, so to speak.
If it's
Good luck with that with some of your colleagues, but I'm throwing it out there. I mean, the least the least we could do is write the letter and send it.
Yes.
And, it seems like a letter is easy to send for each one of those meetings.
Well,
Yes.
just like,
Pleasant Grove is it Pleasant Grove out in Crozet?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Jenny's on that. That's a great example of one where I just with a little bit of prodding, I think the developer could have easily turned that house into something useful in the community.
well, here's a
for the community.
comparison. Here's a comparison. They're protecting the natural resources by stream buffers. So why don't we have a segment that protects the historical resources on a piece of property, just as you would the natural resources? And really identify, have a section in the plan to identify if in any archaeological, structural resources are on the property, and there should be some point in the process to identify and look into these resources.
So just so everyone's clear, so when there's a special use permit or a rezoning application, so Chris or I will look at that and try to determine if there's a historic resource there. So we'll look at the DHR survey information and see what's there. So Whitegate was surveyed and we have that information. We know that's a historic resource. So my comment in the review was, incorporate the building into the layout of the new development. Well, the response is, well, the building's too far gone, we can't do that. So then our recommendation is, well, Historic Preservation Committee policy is to document the property where it's demolished. So can we have access to the property to do that?
Margaret, let me ask you something. If there is a home that can be preserved, a historic home that can be preserved, but it is in a development that is not going to, it's not going to be good for it to remain there, is it possible for the developer to move that structure to a different location so we can preserve that structure?
It has been done. It's just a matter of money, right? Jenny?
I just wanted to add to the discussion, I think what I see, and just having been through the Crozet master plan update, so I'll use that as an example, but it seems to me that, we talk about the overlay or the idea of, I think what staff already do, they point out that there's a historic structure or accessory buildings when there's a rezoning or a special use permit. But I think that, to me, it's like there's competing desires in the comprehensive plan. So historic resources, we want to preserve them, but then we also want affordable housing, and that's going to be in the growth area. So like what watched happen in Crozet is like this idea that there could be some downtown neighborhoods that tend to have more of our historic homes, sort of have there would be an overlay for that. So it was, in my mind, at least since I've been doing planning commission, maybe the closest we'd come to, having some sort of overlay that speaks to historic resources. Now, it wasn't going to say you can't tear this down, but it was going to try to incentivize ways in which you would keep that structure on the property and develop things around it. Maybe you could have a little bit more density, so you could do like an apartment building and then keep the historic home, or whatever it would look like. Unfortunately, the process went on without that staying included, but I think it's something that maybe we could revisit. Maybe all the historic structures will be gone before we revisit it. But what was interesting is watching that and the neighborhoods that were identified to potentially be in an overlay like that. It shifted from we don't know about that, or how it would actually work, or, could it actually be harmful to the historic resources we were trying to protect. And then one of the neighborhoods in Crozet, where it's on the Tabor Street, the Tabor block, ended up actually being included for the land use designation for more density than what was already possible on the property. And that's where I think you have these competing agendas. Like, that's not a move that you would do if you want to protect the historic resource. You don't say, hey, we could put 18 units an acre on this property potentially in the future, whereas before it was 6. But the way that land use designation is written is to encourage, more housing close to downtown. And so there's like the opposite things that people want to have happen. And so I think that's where you see that push and pull. And in that example, people would say, nothing's going to happen if the owners don't want it to. But, it certainly does send the message later that, we can put language in there, and that's the way it was written, is we want to keep the old trees and we want to keep the old structures, but you can build up to 18 units an acre. And we'd also like you to fix the road and build affordable housing. None of that all can't happen together. So, to me, when I see that sort of thing happen, it worries me, because the words are all in there, but the reality is if somebody comes forward with a plan and they can put in a bunch of affordable units, that's great, but we're not going to keep the trees and have a developer expand a road and build sidewalks and keep the historic structures. So I don't know what that adds to the discussion, but I feel like that's where we get this tension, I think. And that's sort of the county's plan. Some of those goals, don't work together. So we have to have a little push and pull.
Jenny's right. She's absolutely correct on that. And we get the developer saying, we don't want to do anything to this house. We want to preserve the house. But they do want to get it rezoned. So it's like, well, if you want to get it rezoned, okay, we're going to rezone it at this. And if you don't want to sell the house or you don't want to demolish the house, then you don't have to. So it's not easy, guys. We do have competing interests.
I mean, I do think we have examples around and in Crozet too, where they've been able to save a home and use it as, the community center for that neighborhood or what have you. In Pleasant Green, one home was saved. Unfortunately, it wasn't the older of the two homes, and people did work extensively to come up with, I think Ross would remember too, the idea of moving it. And, I think my recollection is the developer said, sure, if you pay for that and you have a place you can move it to, and if you want to figure all that out, go for it. But trust me, I tried to figure it out, and obviously it didn't happen. So.
I mean, developers are always going to do what they want to do, what they can do to make money, right? And if they're not required to do these things, and it's not going to serve them an advantage in terms of upzoning or density or height or whatever, they're not going to do it. And meanwhile, the historic resources that make Albemarle County so special and so desirable will be eroded. We've seen it happen over the years. I mean, we could show you the exhibit of Lost Albemarle, of all the historic structures that have been lost over the years. That's all.
But let me ask, since you're from here, Liz, do we have the right, or if the owners don't want to keep those historic structures, do we have the right under Virginia law to say, no, you have to?
So I think the process is that in setting up a local historic districts that are under review by, like, for example, the ARB would review for appropriateness and make those evaluations. I mean, this is, yeah, I think that you.
I think if somebody owns that piece of property and they want to tear that house down and build what they want, I mean, the Virginia laws are pretty lax in that area.
State code allows us to have a local historic district, and the local historic district regulations can speak to alterations and new construction and demolition will often have sort of time requirements, and you have to offer it for sale, and there's amounts of time associated with that. I think in the end, yes, a building could probably be demolished, but there's certain steps that need to be taken.
Right. And Margaret, for a historic district, that would be, I think David, was his name, was saying, like in Charleston, where you have a whole area that is nothing but historic homes, and they're all lined up everywhere. Whereas here in Albemarle, we have historic homes that are spread out through 720 square miles. Is that correct?
Well, you have different, you have historic resources in different settings. For example, Jenny was just referring to Crozet. The historic buildings in Crozet are very different than the historic buildings in the Southern Albemarle Historic District. I think those differences, we should be considering those differences more than we have in the past when we talk about historic districts and those places where the historic buildings are more dispersed are often also associated with the broader landscapes. And I think that's where, I forget who was talking about it, but you know, the historic resources are working together with the landscape and with land that's being conserved. And I think we would do well to think about all those things more holistically and see how they can help each other out.
And having those National Register historic districts allow us, if the government would want, you know, if the municipality wants to, could establish a local historic, you know, some sort of regulation around that. That's the first step in achieving that ordinance would be the establishment of the National Register, either individual listing or, in our case, districts. And we have lots of resources within lots of historic districts, something like 17. Am I getting that?
I'm gonna disagree with you. You do not have to have the National Register or State Register listing to have a local district.
You don't have to it doesn't have to be, is it a certified local government then?
To be a certified local government, you need to have a local historic district ordinance, historic preservation ordinance, to be a certified local government. And
so you could set an ordinance. So for example, a demolition ordinance could transcend all of, it doesn't have to be National Register related. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, they're completely different things. And I think in some cases we have specifically when the work was done to establish some of those National Register districts, those property owners were told, they were explained, in fact, that this does not automatically lead to a local listing and regulations. So it's important for us to remember.
Just want to jump in. It's 5:50 now.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so we are getting close to the end of our time. Good discussion. I don't hate to cut it off, but did anybody who hasn't yet made a comment wanted to say something about the current discussion? Anybody? I don't see any hands.
It's been a fascinating discussion and I learned so much. It's also true that I live at the, I'm surrounded by Cobham Park is down the street. And so I'm surrounded by these things and they're wonderful. And I would love to know, Cobham Park has been for sale for decades, it seems. Not quite sure where that is so I know they worked really hard to get a historic designation, and this is showing my ignorance. Does that always exist? Do you have to reapply? What happens then? Does the question make sense?
For a property, are you asking if a property is listed in the National or State Register, is that a permanent listing?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. I suppose the property could lose its integrity and could be delisted for that reason, but the DHR doesn't have, you know, they don't have a policing agency. They're not out inspecting properties. So it doesn't happen very often. Usually, I think when it happens, a neighbor or, you know, somebody else notices that the property, something's happened to it and they would report it. But I think it really doesn't happen very often. So generally it's permanent.
Well, that's good news for them and us, it seems.
It offers no protection of the property either. It's just a honorary thing.
Right.
It would
Right.
allow for tax credits for that homeowner, and that's a benefit of listing to the National Register, but it doesn't actually ensure preservation.
Right.
This question, I have a question for Margaret or B or Liz or Ross, anyone. Who or what body within Albemarle County, what entity, what department works with Preservation Virginia to start an application process when you see a historic site or places of memory that might be most vulnerable or in danger of becoming extinct? Is there, before we get to that point of demolition, is there a body within the county that works with Preservation Virginia to report that or to?
I think you're looking at them.
I'm looking at Liz.
You're looking at, it's all of us.
All of us, okay.
It's this group, yeah.
So, because I was just curious because I've just never really seen that in action, really in real time. And that's just something that I was just curious about.
Well, I mean,
a property owner can protect their property any way they want by deed restriction. So if someone wants to protect a property in a particular way, they can always place deed restrictions on the property itself, the improvements, restrictions, covenants. Any property owner can do that at their free will. And it's recorded in the deed at the courthouse.
To Diane's point, we don't have a mechanism really
That's right.
to
Thank you.
protect.
Talk to the owner.
I mean, I'm thinking of a church right now. It's really, I'm hearing descendants go, the preacher's gone. There are all but 2 people that come. We're going to lose that church. It's somewhere in the vicinity of Echelon. And I know the family, and I'm just going, what do I do? How do I start the process, the application process to save that, to make Preservation Virginia or someone aware of that, because it would be, we're getting to that point of demolition and this, thus and so. I don't want that to happen.
Liz, do you by any chance know who it Preservation Virginia would be?
Could I just add one last thing in, because it looks like we're making a list of things that we might be addressing in coming. I was really interested to read this chapter, the historic, cultural, and scenic resources. That was very, very helpful, actually. And one of the things that strikes me is that while this committee deals a lot with, I mean, almost exclusively with single buildings, with a house or a structure. And the report actually focuses a lot on scenic, historic roadways and, the character of the county. In the end is the thing that's going to impact the experience of residents and visitors, maybe even more than just preserving a single building. So I guess I'm just sort of, we don't talk about that, and I don't know whether or not that's completely outside the purview of this committee, but it seems like somebody needs to be addressing that. What do our road, when a development comes along, that Carter was mentioning, what's the impact on the road, where thousands of people are going to be going, through that way, not necessarily into a development, but, just simply driving on the major, scenic roads that we treasure so much. So I don't know if that's an issue to be brought up.
That's a good point, but I think it's also related to the point I was trying to make is just, you're right. I mean, we shouldn't just be focusing on individual buildings. And even when we talk about our historic districts, I think it's more than the buildings that make up the district. It's the buildings and the landscapes and the streets and the roadways through it and the views and
yes,
taking that all together, I think might help us better establish better programs and priorities for historic preservation in the county.
Kind of like the entrance corridor.
And there's overlap there too, yeah.
So,
Yes.
do we move on to the one next discussion item before we leave and adjourn?
Yes, turning it back over to you, Ross, thanks.
Just we discussed a plaque for Jared Lowenstein, and I've been trying to design one to think of what the best text verbiage to have on it, and I thought we could just create. As I tried to write it, it just seemed everything seemed a little hokey, that we were kind of giving them this plaque where we could probably establish some type of an award for him for his dedicated service. I mean, it's been so many years. So, I mean, could we constitute giving him a historic preservation award? I mean, would that be a motion?
Or we can make an award in his name.
Well, I would just, I mean, we should be giving, you know, we've discussed this quite a bit. You know, we should have, you know, an annual award of some sort. And we've always talked about property owners and their preservation efforts, but never one of the soldiers that have boots on the ground. I mean, I think they need more of an applaud than anybody. I mean, anybody with money can preserve their home place and make it, you know, wonderful, no matter what size or type of house it is. But Jared has certainly been very active with Ed and with the Charlottesville programs and of course, Albemarle County. So, you know, I'd like to propose that, you know, we have some type of an annual historic preservation award. And I don't think of anyone better for 2022 than Jared Lowenstein. So maybe that's for the next.
Also, I agree with you, but why not carry it one step farther and make an annual award in Jared's name to present annually to someone who would merit it?
We could. I'm just thinking of what you write on the on this little plaque, and if we have his name, and I think it should be devoted to just Albemarle County Historic Preservation.
Or you're saying, for instance, a cup where he gets his name engraved, and then the owner the following year gets his or her name engraved, and so forth.
That's an idea, but that's certainly an idea. And we could have a plaque at the county office building with everybody's name on it, and have every year somebody on that plaque and have it on the first floor. But,
that's a good idea.
But instead of just giving him a plaque of thanks, I thought he deserved a little bit more. A plaque of thanks doesn't carry as much as an award he could put on his wall.
I think it's a great idea, Ross. I think there are ways to, you know, options, different ways to think about it. But I think to, you know, celebrate his, you know, contributions, you know, through an award that goes to, you know, goes out annually. That's as Betsy was saying. I think it's fantastic. Brings publicity, helps people understand, you know, how they can think about going about their, you know, dealing with their historic properties. We could make a big deal out of that and benefit this committee's at work. And I think it's great.
Do we constitute an annual award, or do we have we ever had one before? What have we done in the past, Margaret?
We have not. The board is this week on the Board of Supervisors agenda, on the consent agenda, because Jared did not want to attend the meeting in person virtually. There is a recognition for Jared's service, so he will be getting that from the Board of Supervisors. I think it's totally appropriate for this committee to do something. I think if it wants to establish an annual award program, that's one of the things that will be included in all this work that we're doing now with the various plan updates and you know, prioritizing that among everything else. There's I'm sure we can figure out something that the committee can do for Jared that is more like an award and less like a piece of paper in a cheap frame. I think we can figure that out. But I think the annual program, wonderful idea, but we just need to work it through the process.
Okay, all right, well, let's put that on the agenda maybe.
I like the idea of the Jefferson Cup with his name on it from the Historical Preservation Committee, and maybe do that annually for somebody. They can keep it. I mean, I understand the plaque at the Cobb building. I'm not sure, who's gonna see it, read it, whatever. But I do like the idea of maybe giving an individual's, Thomas Jefferson was very much into history, and maybe something like that. That's just my opinion. I'll go along with whatever the group wants.
I'm thinking he may already have one, be a Jefferson Cup, because of his service at the UVA for so many years. So I don't think so.
Liz, were you going to add something? No. Ross, why don't you and I continue to talk through that?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we've got some good ideas from everybody to move forward on that.
Is this Carolopoulos Award something we should be looking at as an example?
Yeah, I think we should all definitely have a look and come back with, yeah. All right, are there, anybody know of any new owners of historic properties? Or threatened properties to watch, or recent demolished structures? Or resources available to assist the implementation of the HP plan? Any other business from the committee members? Then I think we will adjourn this meeting. The next meeting for the Historic Preservation Committee will be virtual. It's scheduled for March 28th at 4:30, 2022. So I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.